talking to us today. We're going to ask you some questions for our web portal dedicated to law. Professor, one thing that you mentioned in the International Congress of Civil Law was that the law and its institution in general play a fundamental role for economic development. Could you explain us a bit about the relationship between these two concepts and how do you see the situation in Latin America now?
Yes. Thank you for the question. I think it's a very important matter, the relation between law and economic development. When we go back 250 years before the French Revolution, when we had Adam Smith, was the founding father of economics,
Yes.
and with the French physiocrats, Quesnay and Turgot, they were also founding fathers of the discipline of economics, and they both, the physiocrats and Adam Smith, had a very good understanding of the law. Adam Smith even gave lectures where he was a professor in Glasgow on Roman law. And the French physiocrats, they analyzed the economic backwardness of France of the time before the French Revolution, and they related it to the system of sharecropping and in general how the property of land was organized at the time. But unfortunately, this understanding, this close cooperation between lawyers and economists got completely fell apart in the 19th and 20th, especially 20th century. In the 19th century, we still had some outstanding scholars like Max Weber, but you can also name Karl Marx, for instance, who were tried to understand the economics through the law. But in the 20th century, that disappeared and came back only with law and economics. And we know today that economic development needs good institution, good legal rules. Institution from economic perspectives are norms and rules. And that what economists for a long time, neoclassical economists, thought that they were the source of growth, namely capital accumulation, counts only for a small fraction of total growth. And that good institutions matter a lot. I give you just one simple example how law matters. If you take the law of property, of movable property can be used as a pledge or as a collateral to get a credit. And in the United States, for instance, it is easily possible to mark a piece of land and say, well, all the cattle on that land is pledged away to the bank, and then you get a credit. And if the credit is not serviced, the bank can take all the cattle from that particular area. This is not possible in many Latin American countries because the law of property requires that a collateral is very precisely defined. So if the debtor does not have a list with all the pieces of cattle, with the names of each cow or the brand number of each piece of cattle, and if the list is not updated let's say once in a week or so, or every other day, then the courts will not accept this, and then it becomes very difficult to pledge away movable property. And the consequence of that is that most of the movable property in many developing countries is dead capital, because it is so difficult to prepare it for being a collateral and generating credit. This is only one example. And I can give you many more examples. So we know today that it is absolutely necessary for a country to have institutions which guarantee the enforcement of contracts, and which also protects investor, protects property. So this is absolutely necessary, and a country which cannot do this cannot experience growth. Of course, one cannot say one has these institutions must be brought, must be come into existence by the formal law. We have examples like China, for instance, where the law is not very strong. You know, China, not only the human rights situation is not the best, but also the law in general is not the best in China. But China has developed strong so-called substitute institutions with which the same functions are fulfilled, and has therefore, with this substitute institution, has achieved an enormous success in terms of economic growth, but also in terms of reducing poverty and giving young people a better education, for instance. So that is absolutely necessary.
Okay. Thank you very much for answering this question.
My name is Hans-Bern Shäfer, and I'm a professor of law and economics in Hamburg, in Germany. And I want to recommend you this portal for interdisciplinary judicial research, Polemos. It's very recommendable.